The lawnmower sputtered and died for the third time that morning, leaving Riley James sweating under the merciless summer sun. She stepped back from the stubborn machine, tucking a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear, as she surveyed her newly acquired property, 3 acres of overgrown grass, surrounding a modest cottage that was worlds away from her penthouse in Chicago. This was supposed to be a simple project, a weekend getaway to decompress from running her tech empire. Yet here she was, defeated by yard equipment that probably cost less than her designer shoes. Need some help with that. Riley turned to find a man standing at the edge of her property, a little girl with pigtails clutching his hand. He wore faded jeans and a simple t-shirt that had seen better days, but his smile was genuine, lighting up his ruggedly handsome face. "I've been fighting with it all morning," Riley admitted, gesturing helplessly at the lawnmower. "I'm Riley, by the way, just moved in. I'm Brandon Neal. This is my daughter, Lily." He gave the little girl's hand a gentle squeeze. "Say hello, sweetheart." "Hello," Lily said shyly, partially hiding behind her father's leg. She couldn't have been more than 6, with the same warm brown eyes as her father. "We live just down the road," Brandon explained. "Saw you struggling from our driveway. Mind if I take a look?" Riley stepped aside gratefully. "Please, I'm starting to think it might be possessed," Brandon chuckled, kneeling beside the lawnmower. Lily immediately plopped down in the grass nearby, picking dandelions with focused concentration. "You're not from around here, are you?" Brandon asked, examining the machine. Riley hesitated. In Chicago, everyone knew who she was. Riley James, 32-year-old founder and CEO of Neurotech Solutions, the fastest-growing AI healthcare company in the country. Her face had been on the cover of Forbes twice, but here in this small town in Vermont, she was anonymous. And she liked it that way. "I'm from Chicago," she said simply. "This place is just a getaway." Brandon nodded, removing the air filter and examining it. "Figured as much. Most folks around here know how to prime a lawnmower engine." There was no judgment in his voice, just amusement. "This filter's clogged, and you weren't priming the engine before pulling the cord." He demonstrated the proper technique, pressing the small rubber button several times before yanking the cord. The lawnmower roared to life immediately. "That's it," Riley laughed, feeling ridiculous. "I've been out here for an hour. Technology, right?" Brandon smiled, but there was something in his expression, a flicker of recognition, perhaps, that made Riley wonder if he knew who she was. But the moment passed, and he was just a kind neighbor again. "You might want to get that filter replaced soon. I don't suppose you could show me where to buy one?" Riley asked impulsively. "I'm not familiar with the area yet." Brandon checked his watch. "I'd offer to take you now, but I've got to get Lily to her swimming lesson in 20 minutes. "Daddy teaches swimming," Lily announced proudly, abandoning her dandelion collection. Brandon shrugged modestly. "Part-time job at the community center. I'm a high school science teacher, but summer means picking up extra work." Riley nodded, trying not to show her surprise. He didn't look like her mental image of a science teacher. His muscular build suggested more physical work, but there was definitely an intelligence in his eyes that matched the profession. "Maybe another time," Riley said, feeling inexplicably disappointed. "How about this? I can pick one up for you when I'm in town tomorrow," Brandon offered. "Save you the trouble." "That would be amazing," Riley said, reaching for her purse on the porch step. "Let me give you some cash." Brandon waved her off. "Don't worry about it. They're only about $10. You can pay me back when I drop it off." "Thank you," Riley said sincerely. "That's really kind. That's Millfield for you. We look out for each other here." Brandon took Lily's hand again. "We should get going. Nice to meet you, Riley." "Bye, Riley." Lily called over her shoulder as they walked away. Riley watched them go, feeling a strange tug in her chest. Brandon Neal seemed genuinely nice, a rarity in her world of ambitious executives and opportunistic investors. And there was something undeniably attractive about him, from his easy confidence to the gentle way he interacted with his daughter. She turned back to her lawnmower, now humming steadily. For the first time since arriving, she felt a real connection to this place. She'd bought the cottage on impulse after a particularly stressful quarter, dreaming of peaceful weekends away from the pressure of running a billion-dollar company. Now she wondered if there might be other reasons to visit Millfield more often. The next day, Riley was elbow-deep in gardening gloves and mulch when Brandon's pickup truck pulled into her driveway. She straightened up, suddenly conscious of her appearance, no makeup, hair in a messy bun, wearing an old Harvard T-shirt and shorts. Brandon approached with a small paper bag in hand, and Riley noticed he was alone this time. "One air filter, as promised," he announced, holding up the bag. "You're a lifesaver," Riley said, pulling off her gardening gloves. "Lily didn't come with you today. She's at a playdate." "I've got about an hour of freedom," he said with a smile. "Need help installing this?" Riley hesitated, then nodded. "If you don't mind, I'd probably put it in backward or something." "Happy to help, though I should warn you, my hourly rate is steep." "Might cost you a glass of water on a hot day like this," Riley laughed. "I think I can manage that, maybe even upgrade to lemonade if you've got the time." "Well, now we're talking luxury," Brandon joked, following her to the shed where she'd stored the lawnmower. As Brandon worked on the lawnmower, Riley brought out 2 glasses of lemonade. She watched him, noticing how his hands moved with precision and confidence. "So, science teacher, huh?" she asked. "What grade?" "High school, chemistry and physics." He accepted the lemonade with a grateful nod. 8 years now at Millfield High. "Do you like it?" "Love it, actually." Brandon's eyes lit up. There's nothing quite like watching a kid understand something for the first time, that moment when it clicks. He took a sip of lemonade. "What about you? What do you do in Chicago?" Riley paused, then decided on a partial truth. "I work in tech, healthcare software." "Impressive. Big company?" "Big enough," she said evasively. "But honestly, I'm trying to leave work behind while I'm here." Brandon nodded, seeming to understand. "Fair enough. Millfield's good for that disconnecting, I mean. Cell service is spotty at best, which is either a curse or a blessing, depending on who you ask." "Definitely a blessing for me," Riley said truthfully. Her assistant had nearly had a heart attack when Riley mentioned the poor reception, but Riley had been secretly relieved. Brandon finished installing the filter, closing the compartment with a click. "All set. Should run much better now." "Thank you," Riley said, reaching for her wallet on the nearby porch table. "How much do I owe you for the filter?" $8.37, Brandon replied. Riley handed him a 20. "Please keep the change." Brandon looked at the bill, then back at Riley with an unreadable expression. "That's a very generous tip for a small favor." "It's not just for today," Riley insisted. "You saved me yesterday, too." Brandon hesitated, then pocketed the money. "Well, thank you. Lily's been wanting a new book, so this will go toward that." Something in his tone made Riley realize she might have offended him unintentionally. She was used to throwing money at problems, at people, but Brandon didn't seem like the type of person who wanted charity. "I'm sorry if that was presumptuous," she said quietly. Brandon's expression softened. "No need to apologize. We get by fine, Lily and me. I don't want you to think otherwise." "I didn't mean to imply, I know," he interrupted gently, "and I'm being overly sensitive." "Teachers' salary jokes get old, you know?" Riley nodded, relieved that the moment of tension had passed. She wanted to know more about him, about Lily, about their life in this small town so different from her own world. "Is it just you and Lily?" she asked cautiously. Brandon's expression grew more serious. "Yes, her mother left when she was 2, decided family life wasn't for her after all." "I'm sorry," Riley said softly. Brandon shrugged, but Riley could see the old pain there. "It was hard at first, really hard. But we've made our peace with it, found our rhythm." He finished his lemonade. "What about you?" "Family? Just me," Riley admitted. "Parents passed away in my 20s, no siblings." "I'm sorry to hear that," Brandon said, and the genuine empathy in his voice touched her. An awkward silence fell between them, both suddenly aware they'd ventured into personal territory quickly. "Well," Brandon said, checking his watch, "I should probably get going. Need to pick up Lily soon." "Of course," Riley nodded. "Thank you again for your help." Brandon was halfway down the driveway when Riley called after him. "Brandon, I just realized I have no idea how to winterize this place. The real estate agent mentioned something about pipes freezing." Brandon turned back. "Are you planning to use the cottage in winter?" "I'm not sure," Riley said honestly, "but I'd like to know my options." "Tell you what, I can stop by this weekend, give you a crash course in Vermont winter prep. If you're still around, that is." Riley smiled. "I will be. That would be great." As she watched his truck pull away, Riley realized she was already mentally rearranging her schedule to extend her stay in Millfield. 3 days later, Riley found herself in an unexpected predicament. The kitchen sink had developed a persistent drip that had graduated to a steady trickle overnight. After futilely attempting to tighten various parts with a wrench she'd found in the shed, she finally admitted defeat. She could call a plumber, but the only number she had was the local handyman who, according to the welcome packet from the real estate agent, usually gets to jobs within a week or two. She needed a faster solution. Before she could overthink it, Riley was walking down the rural road toward Brandon's house. He'd mentioned they lived just down the way, which in country terms, she'd discovered, meant a good quarter-mile. The sun beat down on her shoulders as she approached a modest white farmhouse with a well-maintained yard and a basketball hoop in the driveway. She was about to knock when she heard laughter from around back. Following the sound, she found Brandon and Lily in the backyard. Brandon was helping his daughter build what appeared to be a model volcano, both of them covered in plaster and laughing as it refused to hold its shape. "No, Daddy, the top has to be pointier," Lily was saying, gesturing dramatically with hands covered in white paste. "If we make it any pointier, it'll look like a party hat," Brandon argued good-naturedly. Hello," Riley called, feeling suddenly intrusive. Both heads turned simultaneously, identical expressions of surprise on their faces. "Riley." Lily exclaimed, waving excitedly with a plaster-covered hand. Brandon stood, wiping his hands on his jeans. "This is a surprise. Everything okay? I hate to bother you," Riley began, "but I've got a leaky faucet that's getting worse by the hour." "I tried fixing it myself, but I think I made it angry," Brandon laughed. "Sounds serious. Plumbing emergencies wait for no one." "I can call a plumber if you're busy," Riley said quickly, nodding toward their project. "Nonsense. Lily and I were just about to take a break anyway, right, kiddo?" Lily nodded enthusiastically. "Our volcano needs to dry before we can paint it. Can Riley help us paint it later, Daddy?" Brandon looked at Riley with a raised eyebrow. "That depends. How are your artistic skills?" "Tragically underdeveloped," Riley admitted. "But I'm very good at staying within the lines." "That's more than I can say for this one." Brandon ruffled Lily's hair, earning a giggle and a protest. "Let me grab my toolbox and I'll follow you over." 20 minutes later, Brandon was under Riley's kitchen sink while she sat on a nearby stool watching him work. "So what's the diagnosis, doctor?" she asked. "Nothing serious," Brandon's voice echoed from inside the cabinet. "Just a worn-out washer. It's pretty common in older places like this." He emerged holding up a tiny rubber ring. "See, this little thing is the culprit. All that trouble from something so small," Riley mused. "Isn't that always the way?" Brandon smiled, reaching back into his toolbox. "Luckily, I've got a replacement here. Should take just a minute to fix." Riley watched him work, struck again by his capability. In her world, problems were solved by calling experts or delegating to assistants. There was something deeply attractive about a man who could tackle everyday problems with his own hands. "So, what's with the volcano?" she asked as he worked. "Lily's summer science project. The kids get to present them at the town's summer science fair next weekend." Brandon tightened something under the sink. "She's been obsessed with volcanoes since watching a documentary about Pompeii." "A little morbid for a 6-year-old, but I'm not going to discourage scientific curiosity." "That's adorable," Riley said, "and the fair sounds fun. You should come," Brandon said casually, emerging from under the sink and testing the faucet. "No more drips." "It's actually a pretty big deal around here. The whole town turns out." Riley felt a flutter of excitement at the invitation. "I'd like that, actually." Brandon packed up his tools, refusing Riley's offer of payment. "Consider it neighborly goodwill," he insisted. "At least let me thank you properly," Riley said. "Maybe dinner. For you and Lily, I'm not much of a cook, but I know my way around a grill." The invitation hung in the air between them. Riley held her breath, suddenly worried she was being too forward. "That sounds great," Brandon finally said with a smile that made Riley's heart skip. "Lily's been saying we need to have more grown-up dinner parties lately. She's in a phase where she thinks she's much older than 6. "Perfect," Riley said, trying not to sound too eager. "Tomorrow night." Around 6, we'll be here, Brandon promised. After he left, Riley realized she was smiling to herself in the empty kitchen. She pulled out her phone, surprised to see she had reception for once, and immediately 5 emails from her assistant popped up, marked urgent. For the first time in her career, Riley swiped them away without reading them. They could wait. She had a dinner to plan. The next evening found Riley nervously checking the steaks on the grill, wondering if she'd made a mistake. She'd driven to the nearest town with a proper grocery store and spent far too much on ingredients, wanting everything to be perfect. Now she worried it might be overkill. Would Brandon think she was showing off? She'd just taken the steaks off the grill when his truck pulled into the driveway. Lily bounded out first, wearing a sundress and carrying a small potted plant. "We brought you a housewarming present," she announced proudly, holding it up as Riley opened the door. "It's a peace lily," Brandon explained, looking slightly embarrassed. Lily picked it out. She thought it was funny because it's named after me, Lily finished, beaming. Riley accepted the plant with genuine delight. "It's perfect. I've been thinking this place needs some life in it." Brandon handed her a bottle of wine. "And this is from me. Nothing fancy, but it's from a local vineyard." "Thank you," Riley said, touched by their thoughtfulness. "Come in, everything's almost ready." Dinner was surprisingly easy. Lily chattered about her school, her friends, and her extensive collection of dinosaur facts. Brandon occasionally guided her back to her food when her storytelling got too animated. Riley found herself relaxing, drawn into their warm dynamic. "This is delicious," Brandon said, halfway through his steak. "You said you weren't much of a cook." "Grilling is different," Riley explained. "It's more science than art, and I've always been better with formulas than creativity." "Science," Lily perked up. "Daddy says cooking is chemistry you can eat." "Your daddy is very smart," Riley smiled at Brandon over her wine glass. "Smart enough to know when I'm being flattered," Brandon replied with a playful smile that made Riley blush slightly. After dinner, Lily asked if she could explore the backyard, and Brandon nodded permission after extracting a promise not to go near the stream at the property's edge. With Lily safely playing within view of the kitchen window, Riley and Brandon cleared the dishes together. "This place has good bones," Brandon commented, looking around the cottage. "How'd you find it?" "Pure chance," Riley admitted. "I was looking for something quiet away from the city. My real estate agent suggested Vermont, and when I saw this place online," she shrugged, "it just felt right." "Millfield has that effect on people," Brandon said, drying a plate she'd handed him. "It's quiet but not empty, if that makes sense. People look out for each other here." "I've noticed," Riley said, thinking of how quickly Brandon had come to her aid twice now. "It's different from what I'm used to. Chicago's a bit faster paced, I imagine." "That's putting it mildly," Riley laughed. "My days are usually scheduled down to 15-minute increments." Brandon raised his eyebrows. "Sounds stressful." "It can be," Riley acknowledged. "But it's also exciting, building something from nothing, watching it grow." "What exactly do you do?" Brandon asked, his curiosity evident. "You mentioned healthcare software, but that's pretty broad." Riley hesitated. She'd been enjoying being just Riley, not Riley James, CEO and tech wonderkind, but something about Brandon made her want to be honest. "I founded a company that develops AI systems for medical diagnostics," she said simply. "We started small, but we've grown significantly." Brandon's hands stilled on the dish he was drying. "You founded it. That's impressive." Riley shrugged, uncomfortable with his admiration. "Right place, right time, really. Healthcare tech was booming and I had a good idea." "Don't downplay it," Brandon said seriously. "Building something successful takes more than luck. It takes intelligence and determination." Riley felt warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the wine. "Thank you." They finished the dishes in companionable silence, occasionally glancing out the window to check on Lily, who was now collecting interesting rocks in the yard. "I should probably get her home soon," Brandon said regretfully, looking at his watch. "It's almost her bedtime." "Of course," Riley said, trying to hide her disappointment. "Thank you both for coming. It's been really nice." "It has," Brandon agreed, meeting her eyes. Something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of mutual interest that made Riley's pulse quicken. The moment was broken by Lily rushing in, proudly displaying her rock collection. As Brandon helped her gather her things, Riley found herself wishing the evening didn't have to end. At the door, Brandon paused. "Don't forget about the science fair this weekend. Saturday at noon in the town square." "I wouldn't miss it," Riley promised. She watched from the porch as they drove away, Brandon waving and Lily bouncing excitedly in her booster seat, still clutching one particularly special rock she'd insisted on keeping. Back inside, Riley picked up her phone for the first time all evening and saw 7 missed calls from her CFO. The quarterly reports were due to the board, and they needed her input on the presentation. With a sigh, she realized she'd have to head back to Chicago sooner than planned. But as she made the call to her assistant to arrange her return, she found herself already planning her next trip to Millfield. And this time, she wouldn't be waiting for something to break before seeing Brandon again. True to her word, Riley returned to Millfield for the science fair that Saturday. She'd spent 3 intense days in Chicago, working around the clock to finalize the quarterly presentation and delegate responsibilities so she could escape again. Her executive team had been surprised Riley typically worked through weekends, but she'd been adamant about keeping her commitment. The town square was transformed with colorful tents and tables displaying children's science projects. Riley spotted Brandon and Lily immediately, standing proudly beside their now painted volcano. Lily wore a lab coat that was several sizes too big, clearly borrowed from her father, with the sleeves rolled up multiple times. "Riley," Lily shouted when she spotted her, waving frantically. "You came." "I promised I would," Riley said, approaching their table. The volcano had been painted in impressive detail, with realistic-looking lava flows painted in bright orange and red. "Wow, this looks amazing. Daddy helped with the painting," Lily admitted. "But I did the lava all by myself." "She's being modest," Brandon said, placing a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "She did most of the painting. I just helped with some of the details." Riley noticed that Brandon looked particularly handsome today, in a button-down shirt instead of his usual t-shirt, his hair slightly neater than normal. Had he made an effort for her? The thought made her smile. "So, do we get a demonstration?" Riley asked Lily. The little girl's face lit up. "Yes, we're doing it at 1 o'clock when the judges come around. It's going to explode." She emphasized this with dramatic hand gestures. "Not literally explode," Brandon clarified quickly. "Just a controlled reaction with baking soda and vinegar, very safe." "I wouldn't miss it," Riley promised. As they waited for the judging to begin, Brandon offered to show Riley around the fair. With Lily safely supervised by another parent manning the table next to theirs, Brandon and Riley wandered through the displays. "This is quite an event," Riley commented, impressed by the community turnout. "I wasn't expecting so many people." "Millfield takes its science education seriously," Brandon explained, his pride evident. "We might be small, but we've sent kids to MIT and Caltech. The school board actually prioritizes STEM funding, which is rare for a rural district." "That's amazing," Riley said sincerely. "And I'm guessing you've had something to do with that," Brandon shrugged modestly. "I might have advocated for it a bit." As they walked, several people greeted Brandon warmly, many introducing themselves to Riley with curious glances. She realized that her presence with Brandon was likely causing some local speculation. "I think I'm becoming the subject of town gossip," Riley murmured after a particularly obvious exchange of looks between 2 older women. Brandon chuckled. "Welcome to small town life. Nothing stays private for long." "Does that bother you?" Riley asked, suddenly concerned. Brandon looked at her thoughtfully. "That people might think we're something? No, does it bother you?" Riley felt her cheeks warm. "No, not at all." They shared a smile, and Riley felt that same connection she'd experienced in her kitchen days, before a pull toward this man that was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. They returned to Lily's table just as the judges approached. Lily's demonstration went perfectly, with foaming lava cascading down the volcano's sides to enthusiastic applause. The judges seemed impressed, and Lily was beaming with pride. "That was perfect, sweetheart." Brandon hugged his daughter after the judges moved on. "Do you think I'll win?" Lily asked anxiously. "I think you did an amazing job," Brandon answered diplomatically. Whatever happens, I'm incredibly proud of you. Riley watched their interaction with a lump in her throat. There was something so genuine about their relationship, a solid foundation of love and support that Riley had rarely witnessed. Her own father, while loving, had been distant, a busy surgeon who'd shown his affection through providing for her rather than presents. Brandon's dedication to his daughter was beautiful to witness. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of science demonstrations, local food, and easy conversation. When the awards were announced, Lily received an honorable mention in the K2 category, which she declared almost as good as winning with adorable seriousness. As the fair wound down, Brandon helped Lily carefully pack up their volcano. "We're having a little celebration dinner tonight," he told Riley as they worked. "Nothing fancy, just pizza at our place. Would you like to join us?" "I'd love to," Riley replied, perhaps too quickly. The evening at Brandon's house was relaxed and comfortable. They ate pizza on the back deck, watching fireflies emerge as dusk fell. Lily, exhausted from the excitement of the day, fell asleep on the couch shortly after dinner while watching a movie. Brandon carried her to bed, returning to find Riley examining the family photos that lined the hallway. "She's growing up so fast," Riley commented, pointing to a picture of a toddler-aged Lily. "Too fast," Brandon agreed, standing close enough that Riley could smell his cologne. "Sometimes I wish I could slow it all down." "You're doing an amazing job with her," Riley said sincerely. Brandon looked at her, his expression softening. "Thank you, that means a lot." They moved to the deck, where Brandon opened another bottle of wine. The night was warm, stars emerging in the clear Vermont sky. "So," Brandon said after they'd been sitting in comfortable silence, "when do you have to go back to Chicago?" The question hung between them, heavy with implications. "Tomorrow," Riley admitted reluctantly. "I have meetings I can't miss on Monday." Brandon nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. "Will you be back? To the cottage, I mean." Riley looked at him, deciding to be honest. "I came back this weekend specifically to see you and Lily at the science fair. I rearranged meetings and worked through the night to make it happen." Brandon's eyes widened slightly. "You did?" "I did," Riley confirmed. "And I'd like to come back next weekend too, if that's not too forward." Brandon set down his wine glass and turned to face her fully. "Riley, I need to be clear about something. I'm a package deal. Lily is my priority always, and my life here is, well, it's not glamorous. I teach science to teenagers, coach swimming in the summer, and worry about things like property taxes and college funds." "I know all that," Riley said softly. "And you should know that I Googled you," Brandon admitted, "after you mentioned founding a medical AI company." Riley James of Neurotech Solutions, Forbes 30 under 30, net worth. He trailed off. "Does that change things?" Riley asked, suddenly nervous. Brandon was quiet for a moment. "It should, shouldn't it? We're from completely different worlds. You run a billion-dollar company. I grade lab reports and make sure my daughter eats her vegetables. And fix lawnmowers for strangers," Riley added with a small smile. "That too," Brandon acknowledged with a chuckle. "Brandon, I've spent the last decade building something I'm proud of," Riley said carefully. "But success isn't just about money. It's about living a life that feels meaningful. And the truth is, I've been lonely. I come home to an empty penthouse every night. I have colleagues, not friends. The last few weeks here, getting to know you and Lily. It's the most connected I've felt to anyone in years." Brandon reached across the space between them and took her hand. "I've felt it too." Riley's heart raced at his touch. "So what do we do about it?" "Well," Brandon said thoughtfully, "I think we acknowledge that this is complicated but worth exploring. I have a life here that I love and won't uproot. You have commitments in Chicago." "I can work remotely more often," Riley said immediately. "My team is capable. And I've been thinking of opening a satellite office in Burlington anyway." Brandon raised an eyebrow. "That's awfully convenient timing." Riley blushed. "Maybe I've been thinking about it since I met a certain science teacher." Brandon smiled, squeezing her hand. "Let's take it one step at a time. See where this goes without putting too much pressure on it." "I'd like that," Riley agreed. Brandon leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. Instead, Riley met him halfway, their lips meeting in a soft, tentative kiss that quickly deepened. When they finally pulled apart, both were slightly breathless. "I've wanted to do that since I saw you fighting with that lawnmower," Brandon admitted. Riley laughed. "Not my finest moment." "I disagree. You looked determined and frustrated and absolutely beautiful." "Charmer," Riley accused lightly. Brandon shrugged, unapologetic. "Just honest." Over the next 2 months, Riley established a pattern of spending long weekends at the Millfield cottage. She rearranged her schedule to allow for remote work on Fridays and Mondays, giving her 4-day stretches in Vermont. Her executive team had adjusted surprisingly well to her new arrangement, especially after she'd explained the situation, minus the personal details. Brandon and Lily became fixtures in her Millfield life. They hiked local trails, visited the farmer's market, and spent lazy Sunday afternoons reading on Riley's porch. Brandon and Riley's relationship deepened, their different backgrounds becoming less important as they discovered shared values and complementary perspectives. Lily had taken to Riley immediately, especially after learning that Riley's company made robot doctors, as she called them. The little girl now proudly told anyone who would listen that her daddy's girlfriend makes robots that help sick people. The term girlfriend had first appeared 3 weeks into their relationship, during a community barbecue where introductions had become necessary. Brandon had glanced at Riley questioningly, and she'd nodded with a smile. It felt right. It was a crisp fall evening when Riley found herself sitting on Brandon's porch swing, watching him rake leaves in the front yard. Lily was inside, working on homework under the supervision of Mrs. Porter, their elderly neighbor who occasionally babysat. "You know," Riley called out, "I could hire someone to do that." Brandon looked up, leaning on his rake. "Where's the fun in that? Besides, this is good exercise." Riley smiled, wrapping her sweater tighter around herself. She'd learned that Brandon had a strong, independent streak. He wasn't uncomfortable with her wealth exactly, but he preferred to do things himself when possible. "I had an interesting call with my board yesterday," Riley said as Brandon collected another pile of leaves. "Oh." He prompted, not looking up from his task. "They're supportive of my plan to open the Burlington office. Construction starts next month." Brandon straightened, studying her face. "That's great news. Congratulations." "There's more," Riley continued, her heart racing slightly. "They've agreed to my restructuring proposal. I'm promoting my COO to President of Operations, which will reduce my day-to-day responsibilities significantly." Brandon set down his rake and walked over to the porch, sitting beside her on the swing. "That sounds like a big change." "Are you sure it's what you want?" Riley nodded. "I founded Neurotech to make a difference in healthcare. The company's doing that now, with or without me micromanaging every decision. I've realized I want more balance in my life." "And this decision," Brandon said carefully, "it doesn't have anything to do with us, does it?" Riley turned to face him. "It has everything to do with us, but not in the way you might think. Being with you and Lily these past months has shown me what I've been missing. I'm not stepping back because I think it's what you want, or because I feel I have to choose. I'm doing it because I want both a meaningful career and a meaningful personal life." Brandon was quiet for a moment, processing her words. "What exactly are you saying, Riley?" "I'm saying I've found a house for sale, here in Millfield." Riley held his gaze steadily. "It's about halfway between your place and the cottage. 3 bedrooms, big backyard, good school district, though I suppose you already know that." Brandon's eyes widened. "You want to move here?" "Permanently? I'd split my time between here and Chicago, at least at first," Riley clarified. "But yes, I want to make this my home base. I want to be here with you and Lily, if that's something you'd want too." Brandon's expression softened into a smile. "You know, when I helped you with that lawnmower, I never imagined we'd end up here." "Is that a yes?" Riley pressed, suddenly nervous. Instead of answering directly, Brandon pulled her close and kissed her deeply. "It's an absolutely," he whispered against her lips. 6 months later, Riley stood in the kitchen of her new home, their home, watching through the window as Brandon taught Lily how to plant tulip bulbs in the garden. The fall air was crisp, promising the first frost soon. Her phone buzzed with an email from her assistant. The quarterly reports showed another record-breaking period for Neurotech. Riley smiled, setting the phone aside without responding immediately. The reports would still be there after dinner. Brandon looked up and caught her watching them, giving her a wave and a smile that still made her heart skip. He said something to Lily, who immediately abandoned her gardening tools and ran toward the house. "Riley," she called, bursting through the door with excitement. "Daddy says we can get a puppy for Christmas. Can we, please?" Riley laughed, lifting the now 7-year-old into a hug. "Did he now? Well, I suppose we do have plenty of yard space for a dog." "Yes." Lily pumped her fist triumphantly before racing back outside to tell her father the good news. Brandon entered moments later, garden dirt on his knees and a sheepish expression on his face. "I was going to discuss the dog thing with you first, but she overheard me talking to Mark about his new litter of lab puppies." "It's fine," Riley assured him, handing him a glass of water. "I've been thinking a dog would be nice too." "Have I told you lately that you're amazing?" Brandon asked, setting down the water to wrap his arms around her waist. "Not since this morning," Riley teased. "Well, you are," Brandon said seriously. "Thank you for appending your life for us." "I didn't append it," Riley corrected gently. "I completed it." Outside, Lily was carefully arranging her planted bulbs, her face a picture of concentration. Inside, in the warmth of their kitchen, Riley and Brandon held each other, marveling at how a chance encounter with a stubborn lawnmower had led them exactly where they needed to be. And Riley silently thanked herself for creating all those flimsy excuses, to see the kind-hearted science teacher again from lawnmower problems, to leaky faucets never imagining he'd become the most valuable part of her life.